Okay, welcome everyone to our presentation here today with Mile High SHRM. This one is called Increasing Mental Health by Building Mental Fitness. We're very excited to welcome Rachel Peru here with us today as our speaker for the webinar. My name is Elda Della Pena, and I will be moderating today on behalf of Mile High SHRM. So let's get started with a few housekeeping items. I just want to make sure everybody can verify that their phone and speakers are currently on mute. To interact with either myself or the speaker, please feel free to use the chat feature or raise your hand. Rachel, that's up to you if you're okay with them raising their hand and asking questions. They can certainly, and when I say raise your hand, I mean the emoji hand raise on the Zoom. So we can address questions also at the end of the Q&A and have a Q&A there. So we will be sharing also a PDF that you will be able to save and view. So we'll share that later on, and Rachel will mention when we get to that one. And we'll be putting that into the chat version for you. You'll also receive a follow-up email from Mile High SHRM after the webinar. So many of you are most likely interested in receiving SHRM or HRCA credit for your attendance. To receive the credit, you do have to remain present on the webinar for at least 75% of the scheduled time. So there will be polling questions throughout the presentation to enhance our engagement. And then SHRM HRCA credits will be issued here at the end. So before we get started with the bio, I'm going to go ahead and I need to admit a few more people here. I can't admit and talk at the same time. So
multitasking.
Okay, great. So welcome everyone to our Mile High SHRM members. We appreciate your continued support. So I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Rachel's personal journey as a recovering perfectionist has inspired her to create Stepping Into More, a professional and personal development company dedicated to supporting clients to identify their GPS, natural gifts, passions, and where they like to be in service in order to unearth and honor their true north, activities where the three components intersect. Prior to launching Stepping Into More, highlights from Rachel's corporate experience includes human resource manager at EMI Music Distribution and manager of organization development and training at Easton Sports. Rachel earned an MS in counseling for business, achieving her coaching professional credential through the International Coaching Federation, which is ICF, and is a certified strengths coach. So that's a lot of mouthful there. So welcome, Rachel. Thank you for being here with Mile High SHRM, and take it away.
Thank you so much, Elda, and welcome to everybody. And thank you, Brave Soul, for putting yourself on camera. As I was mentioning to those of you a little earlier, if you're comfortable doing that, I welcome that. It's always nice to know that I'm actually talking to human beings and not just a blank space. So our session will be definitely interactive. I'm really delighted to be with you here today. I was actually just in Denver on Monday. My daughter graduated from MF, her master's in social work at Metropolitan. So Denver holds a near and dear place in my heart. And this topic does as well, especially that May is Mental Health Awareness Month. So it's a very timely topic. And we will be utilizing participant materials, and I'll put up my slides in just a moment. So Elda, if you want to put those participant materials, please, in the chat box. If you're able to download these, great. If not, no worries. You'll be able to get through the session with grace and ease without the participant materials as well. So no stress there. And as we're getting that going, I would love to know who we have with us today. So we have our first poll, and Elda, if you want to put that up, I'd love just to get a sense of who you are. So we have some different options here. Number one, are you an internal HR practitioner or an individual contributor? Number two, are you a manager or above? Number three, are you involved in HR externally, perhaps as a consultant? 4, student, or 5, are you HR curious and you're here to check out and learn more about HR? So go ahead, please, and make your selection.
We'll give everybody some time to get that on there. Just a few more seconds. I've got 25 participants and 23 responses so far.
Okay, we're so close. And while you're doing that, I'm going to pull up my slides. So hopefully you can all see that.
Okay, let's go ahead and end the poll. And share results. You should be able to see it now.
Terrific. All right, so we have 46% of you HR managers or above, 29% HR practitioners. We have 21% HR consultants, and it looks like 4% HR curious. I love that. Great. So the good news is this topic applies to all of you, and it applies really to all human beings. So you're covered there. And I have another near and dear place in my heart for HR folks, being, as Elda shared, my roots are in HR. So it's always a pleasure to be with fellow HR practitioners. And this topic, mental fitness, one of the silver linings, if you would, of the pandemic, which we are thankfully no longer technically a pandemic, is that really this topic of mental health and became much more normalized, if you would, excuse the pun, and also very relevant. And it's really allowed, I think, much more openness for topics such as the one we're going to be discussing today. And this is good for all folks, including HR professionals. And to highlight that HR side of things, there was a survey done in 2022 by WorkVivo, surveying more than 520 HR folks in the US and the UK. And some of the highlights that came out of this study, as a result of workplace transformations and the Great Resignation, 98% of participants said that they felt burnt out. And the trend of employee burnout emerging from hybrid work situations and working remotely, the survey revealed that HR leaders felt the brunt of this burnout because, as I'm sure many of you have experienced, they were the ones that really were dealing and shouldering with these issues largely on their own. And out of the people that were surveyed, 94% said they felt overwhelmed in the last 6 months, while 88% said they dreaded work. And some 97% of those that responded said they felt emotionally fatigued over the last year. So this study shows that mental fitness that we're going to be talking about today is not just for our employees. This is really an important topic for us personally as well. And I'm going to give you an opportunity to get a link to the study that I just referenced a little bit later in our session, along with some other goodies too. So let's start by defining what do we even mean by mental fitness, which is our focus for today. And I'm trying to get my slide to progress. There we go. So mental fitness is our ability to handle life's challenges with a positive versus a negative mindset. And when we experience mental fitness and are able to experience things in a more positive way, we have 3 types of benefits. Number 1, we are performing at our best. Number 2, we have an overall state of well-being and peace of mind. And number 3, our relationships are thriving. And these are foundational pieces of life. So there's obviously a lot to gain by being able to have a good level of mental fitness. And this framework that I'm going to share with you was created by Shirzad Chamine. And Shirzad was a professor at Stanford and at Yale. He was also the CEO of the Coaches Training Institute, which is a very well-known and large coach training organization. And you can find more about the research I'm going to be sharing with you in his New York Times bestselling book, Positive Intelligence, which has been translated into 20 languages. So this idea of mental fitness, again, our ability to handle life challenges with a positive versus negative mindset, this leads us to our second poll. And when you think about this definition and you think about yourselves recently, sort of snapshot in time, I'd love to hear from you how frequently you would consider yourself to be mentally fit. So Elda, if you want to launch that second poll, please. Thank you. So do you find yourself feeling mentally fit? Did it disappear or?
It did. It disappeared. I'm sorry. It's
No problem.
let's say it's operator error. So I am not sure what I did here.
Well, I'll talk through it, and if you're able to, oh, there we go. We were able to get back on. Great. Well done. So how frequently are you mentally fit? All the time, most of the time, sometimes, rarely, or never? And this is just for you. You're all anonymous. So go ahead and go with your gut. When you think about where you are, snapshot in time today, how frequently are you mentally fit?
I'm gonna wait for a few more seconds, allow for some more time. I can see that there's still a few participants who have not answered the poll. Okay, it's been a minute. I'll go ahead and close the poll.
Drum roll, please. Okay, nice. So 67% consider yourself most of the time, 29% sometimes, 5% rarely. So we have a nice range there, and thank you for giving us a sense of how you're doing today. And the research shows in Shirzad's research that only 20% of people actually hit peak performance. So of course, the question is, how do we become one of those 20%, right? We like to be in that 20%, which leads to our agenda for today. In case you haven't noticed, I've just defined mental fitness for you, and I've given you some context. And what we're going to start to do now are to get into the 3 core muscles of mental fitness and this framework, which is called positive intelligence. The first is the saboteur interceptor, and that we all have a judge and 9 accomplished saboteurs we're going to be talking about. You're going to have an opportunity to actually take the saboteur assessment, and get a sense of which of those saboteurs might be gripping you. Then we're going to talk about our stage, which is really who we are at our core, and being able to experience more positivity in our lives. And then the third core muscle, self-command. What do we do when we're triggered by our judge and saboteurs so that we can then access our stage? And so that is where we're headed. And then we'll round things out with a raffle and some fun giveaways. And you're also going to walk away, hopefully, with an action plan around a real life situation that you can be applying all of these concepts to, so you get some real work done during our time together as well. So that is where we're headed. And again, we are using those participant materials as a guide to support you during our time together. And for those of you that were able to access those, if you look at the very last page, there's an action plan there. So the idea is, instead of having to put Post-it notes or fold pages, you could just write any insights, ahas, that things you want to remember to take away from our time together in that last page. So that's what that's all about. So I'm going to start by sharing a little bit more about the research that was done to create this framework. And one of the things that I personally love about this framework, of course, being a coach, having my master's degree in counseling for business, I've been exposed to many different frameworks. But what I love about this particular framework is, because of this research, Shirzad was able to combine numerous modalities, including cognitive behavioral therapy, positive psychology, neuroscience, performance science, mindfulness, all into one simple and impactful framework. And the research included over 500,000 people in 50 countries, hundreds of CEOs and their executive teams, Stanford students, and world-class athletes. And again, this information and research is in the book, Positive Intelligence, that I mentioned before. And the way that Shirzad conducted this research was through factor analysis. And with factor analysis, it discovers the root cause of things, which helps to radically simplify things. So just as an example, if you think about colors, we have thousands of colors, but at the root cause of colors, we have three factors. We have red, blue, and green. And the same is true with the research that was done with mental fitness. We have three core muscles of mental fitness. As I mentioned a moment ago, we have our saboteur interceptor, we have our sage, and this idea of self-command and how to sort of neutralize our saboteur when it comes up and to be able to access our sage. And this is really what we're focusing our attention on during our time together today. So let's start to get more into it. So first of all, we all have 10 saboteurs, which includes one master judge that I'm going to explain in just a moment. And we also have 5 sage powers, which are our superpowers, if you would. And when Shirzad was creating this framework, his Stanford students like to lovingly call this framework the Jedi training. So for our Star Wars fans, our saboteurs are our Darth Vaders, and our sage is our inner Jedi. And we have this constant battle in our head going on between our saboteurs, our Darth Vaders, and our inner Jedi. And just to kind of get ourselves into this topic, what I'm going to ask you to do, if you take a look, please, at your materials on page 4, or if you just want to take out a blank piece of paper, that's totally fine. And if you could just draw a line, a horizontal line representing on the left side when you woke up today, and on the right side today, right now, present time. And I'm going to ask you to take a brief minute on your own to go ahead and annotate on your line any positive thoughts you've had thus far today and any negative thoughts you've had so far today. So you're going to go ahead and jot down any negative thoughts, any positive thoughts. So I'll give you a minute or so to do that. Take a few more seconds there. And once you've had a chance to capture these positive and negative thoughts, I'm going to invite you either in the chat or on the slide here itself, if you are high tech and know how to annotate on the slide, either will do, to please let us know so far today were the majority of your thoughts positive, negative, or equal. So either on the chat or the slide itself. Thank you, Kay. Positive, negative, or equal. All right, Alexis, way to go on the annotating. We have equal, negative, positive, equal from Karen. Who else? We have a few more equals. And again, totally for you. So just be honest with yourself here. Mainly positive, some equal. Thank you, Stephanie. Okay, well, we have a really great group here with a lot of folks that are reporting equal, some positive, and a couple negative, because normally most people will write negative. Why is that? Well, it's because the way we're hardwired as human beings for survival purposes. When we needed to escape that saber-toothed tiger, it was really important for our brain to be able to really narrow all of its resources to be able to look for those negative factors in order to be able to survive. And actually, there was research done years ago through neuro-linguistic programming that states that we have 60,000 thoughts a day. 95% of those thoughts are the same thoughts we had yesterday, and 80% of those thoughts are negative. And here's the real kicker: our feelings lead to our thoughts, which lead to our actions. And if most of our thoughts and feelings are subconscious and negative, we're running on autopilot. We're not even aware what kind of choices we're making because we're just going on those negative feelings and thoughts. So as a coach, it's really important that for me personally, I'm working with my clients to help them bring up those negative subconscious feelings and thoughts to a conscious level so that we can make more conscious choice and hopefully thrive and experience greater mental fitness, which is what this is all about. All right. Really important to be aware of those thoughts and feelings that we're having. Positive intelligence asserts that we want to have a 3-to-1 ratio of positive versus negative thoughts, if possible, to create a positive vortex. The same is true on the negative side. If you have 3-to-1 ratio of negative over positive, that is a negative vortex. And we as humans have mirror neurons. So it's very easy for us to bring others into our positivity or our negativity. So some food for thought there. And speaking of thought, I want to give you an opportunity now to delve into some thought around a real life situation that you are currently dealing with. So I invite you to consider, it could be a work situation, it could be a personal situation that perhaps is triggering you a bit. Maybe you have some curiosity around it and you'd like to use this opportunity during our time together to see how your judge and saboteur might be impacting, how your sage might be impacting the situation. You can choose whatever you want. You do not have to share it. I do invite you to think, though, about situations that aren't too traumatic. We're not looking to really trigger you. We're just wanting a situation that, okay, this is something I like to explore and delve into. And if you look at your material on page 5, there's an opportunity to jot down what that situation is. And Elda, I'm also noticing that we still have a couple of those annotations. Is there a way to clear that on your end?
I don't, that is a good question. I'm not a tech person, so I don't even know how they got on there.
Here, I think I got it.
I think you got it. Yes, yes.
Okay, there we
We've
go.
got most of them. There's still one right in the middle.
Thank you. Let's see if I can do that. Yeah, I'm not sure about that one.
I'll look for it and see if I can figure it out, but in the meantime.
No problem.
Oh, Alexis said that they have to clear them themselves. So whoever put it in there has to clear it out.
Oh, thank you so much, Alexis. I appreciate that. So yeah, whoever wrote equal theirs by our person on the pond, if you wouldn't mind deleting that, that would be fabulous. All right. So now that you have a real life situation in mind, let's start by talking about our first muscle here in the mental fitness operating system. And as I mentioned, that is our saboteur interceptor. And the saboteur interceptor has 2 components. It has our judge and it has 9 accomplished saboteurs. And we're going to start by talking about our judge. All right, so we all have a judge, otherwise known as the master saboteur. And the judge is judges three things, and it might show up a little different for each of us. But the judge basically will judge ourselves. It will also judge others, and it will judge situations and circumstances. So what I mean by the self, that's that voice that keeps you up in the middle of the night screaming at you, right? Like, why did you screw that up today? Or you really sucked in today's client meeting. Oh, you're terrible. When are you ever gonna learn? This is our judge, our self judge. I like to fondly call mine Sally, the critical stage mother. Okay. We also have our judge of other folks. And then the third, which you might not be as aware of, and I wasn't at first, which is our judge of situations or circumstances. And what I mean by that, it's that voice that tells us, you know what? I can't be happy until X. I can't be happy until I get that new client, until I get that promotion, until I have the relationship of my dreams, whatever it is for you. And then normally when we get that thing, celebrate for a couple of minutes, and then it's on to the next. Nope, can't be happy. Can't be happy until the next one. So this aspect of our judge keeps us on the constant hamster wheel of negativity, not being able to really enjoy the fruits of our labor and the good things that are happening in our life, because we have to constantly be looking for that next thing. So if we only had the judge, they might be able to, our sage might be able to fight with the judge and win, but these are sneaky judges, and they have 9 accomplished saboteurs. And as you see here, the 9 saboteurs, we have this lovely cast of characters: our controller, our hyperachiever, restless, stickler, pleaser, hypervigilant, avoider, victim, or hyper rational. And you'll notice there's different motivations and styles associated with each of these saboteurs. And what happens is when we are emotionally triggered, our judge will show up with one or more of these saboteurs and hijack us. So that's what's going on there. And when we are hijacked in that way, we will experience the not so pretty emotions, as I like to call them. So whether we're anxious, fearful, we're feeling shame, judgment, any of those emotions are a sign that our judge and one or more of these saboteurs are at play. Our Darth Vaders are acting up, if you would. And so to recap, that's what happens when we are hijacked. The judge and one or more of these saboteurs are showing up. So now that we know about this theoretically, in a little bit, I'm going to give you an opportunity to actually participate in a saboteur assessment so that you can start to identify, which of these nasty characters are really showing up for me and might be hijacking me currently. And as we're considering the judge and the saboteurs, I invite you not to judge our judge, no pun intended, because this is all part of the human experience. And, whichever saboteurs you might have been born with, and FYI, there is a nature nurture component to saboteurs. Some of it's based on our conditions. A lot of it, though, is just the way we're pre-wired. And, this is just a part of our human experience. So I'm going to pause there for a moment, and I'd love to utilize our chat box. And I'd like to know, based on everything I've shared with you thus far, what's really percolating for you? What is whetting your appetite and you're finding really interesting? So go ahead, please, and put that in the chat box. I feel you all typing away. What is catching your attention thus far? All right, there we go. All right, thank you, Kay. How the judge it can show up, hyperachiever and pleaser are resonating thus far. Okay, we'll see on the assessment too what comes to mind for you there. Lauren, interesting to see these labels on what I've already perceived to be my hang up. One of the things I love about this framework. Yes, anyone else? What's percolating for you so far? What's resonating? All right, Emily, definitely resonating avoider. Thank you. Samantha, I feel like the whole top row resonates with me and I go between them when I'm stressed. Wonderful insight there. Jury style classifications are interesting. I am a pleaser. Fantastic. All right, so I'm glad this is starting to sink in. And like I said, in a moment, you're going to have a chance to actually take an assessment and get even more insight here. Thank you, Stephanie. Pleaser and stickler are resonating for you. Great. So let's chat a little bit more about these saboteurs and our sage. So first of all, from a neuroscience perspective, the saboteurs are located primarily in the amygdala, the limbic system, parts of the left brain, whereas our sage is located primarily in the prefrontal cortex, where we're able to experience empathy and different parts of the right brain region. And for some of you might be aware that when we're in that survival brain, the amygdala, that fight, flight, or freeze part of our brain, we cannot activate or access our prefrontal cortex. We are not hardwired to do that. So it's really important that we find a way to have a pattern interrupt when we're noticing our judge and our saboteurs, which is the self-command muscle I'm going to be sharing with you in a bit, so that we're in a more neutral space so that we can then access our sage. And then again, lots more information about this in the Positive Intelligence book if you're interested. With the saboteurs, they motivate us through negative emotion. So anytime you're experiencing any of those emotions on the screen there, chances are your judge and one or more of these saboteurs are showing up. Whereas for the sage, the sage is who we are at our core, motivates us through positive emotion, including empathy, curiosity, creativity, innovation, passion, purpose, all those positive emotions. And actually the emotional aspect here is a way to help us have a barometer as to whether or not we are in saboteur land or in our sage. If you're experiencing negative emotion, chances are you're on that left side of the screen here. And if you find, yourself thinking about in the past how you've been showing up until now, what's been motivating you? Have you been motivating yourself primarily through pushing, shoving, judging yourself? Or are you more in flow? Things are more positive. You're able to go through things with grace and ease, activating our sage. And this can be confusing for some of us because our saboteurs have a way of telling us that we need them in order to get things done. They like to tell us that you need to keep either judging yourself, shaming yourself, shooting on yourself. That's how we've gotten success in the past. But the truth is, you can get success with your saboteurs, but you will never be happy. So accessing our sage is what allows us to really experience greater happiness and fulfillment in our human experience. So this really begs the question then, do we need negative emotions? Are negative emotions even good for us? And those saboteurs can be tricky. They might tell us, yeah, like for example, you need to procrastinate. You need that fire under your butt to get things done, or you need to be that stickler in every single detail to make sure it's 120% correct. They like to have us think that this is our identity, but they're really only aspects of who we are. They are not all of who we are, whereas our sage truly is who we are. And this question, are negative emotions good for you, begs another question. And that is, is pain good for you? Is pain good for you? Now we have this picture of a hand on a hot stove. I would say pain is important here, right? We need pain as an alert system to know, oh my gosh, I have my hand on the hot stove here. I hopefully am going to take my hand off the hot stove as quickly as possible. But when it comes to our negative emotions, what we tend to do is ruminate in them and have that hamster wheel keep going. We keep our hand on the hot stove. That is what we tend to do. So the idea here is that with our negative emotions, that we use them as an alert signal, and that we are able to then recognize, our judge and one or more of these saboteurs are up. What can I do to mitigate and get to a more neutral place so that I can access my sage, not keep our hand on the hot stove? So that is what we're after here. And some of you might be asking yourself, well, but isn't it good to know our shortcomings? Isn't it good to know, where we're weak? And one of the key differentiators between the saboteur and the sage are this idea of judgment versus discernment. Judgment versus discernment. So let me give you an example. Let's say that I finished a coaching session with somebody and my judge is at play. My judge might start yelling at me. What the hell did you do during that session? Why did you talk so much? Why did you take over the agenda? When are you ever going to learn just to be quiet and let the client take the lead? That's my judge. Whereas if I'm in sage mode, my sage can discern and really look more objectively. It can look and say, wow, let's celebrate the success of really what went well in that session. And what might I do differently next time? Maybe I could have created a little more space or paused a little more, so the client could have had some time to think before jumping in with a solution. Maybe I could have really let them lead the agenda instead of me in my head already thinking ahead of time of what I was hoping to accomplish during our session. So very different energy, more of a curiosity, an openness, looking for the learning, which is really what the sage is all about. And so, yes, we want to have those negative emotions, but again, not to get hung up and ruminate on them. That is not going to help us. And the number one lie of the judge is that we need to punish ourselves for mistakes. Otherwise, we're not going to learn. And for anyone familiar with the growth mindset, that is not accurate. That is not true. We can continue to learn, to grow, to build new neural synapses. So we do not need to torture ourselves and to think the only way to learn and grow is through shaming and shoulding and judging ourselves. Okay, so with that, I want to give you an opportunity to experience this saboteur assessment on your own. I have a sample up here just so you can see what the report looks like. And you'll notice that James here, his top three saboteurs, controller, avoider, hypervigilant. And FYI, these might change over time or also around what circumstances you're experiencing. When I first took this assessment, restless was my number one saboteur. And then as I really worked with restless and understood restless and started seeing it in my life, the second time I took the assessment, it ranked number 5 for me. So this can vary over time. And it gives you a nice snapshot of, where you are today when it comes to these saboteurs. And this also gives you food for thought as you understand and recognize your saboteurs of how to intercept them as they are arising for you. So I'm going to put a link here, and then Elda, if you wouldn't mind putting a link for the assessment in the chat box as well. Thank you so much. And then what's going to happen is you're going to have a chance now to take the assessment, and it will take you about 5 minutes. It's pretty quick. And once you've had a chance to do that, if you have a little extra time while we're waiting for folks to take the assessment, if you please take a look at your material, starting on page 6, you'll see this on page 6. And then starting on page 7, I've given you all kinds of information on each of the saboteurs, including characteristics, thoughts, feelings, the lie that each saboteur tells us. So if you have a little time, you might want to reflect on your top 1 or 2 saboteurs and perhaps underline in one color what resonates for you as you're reading that description, perhaps in another color what you might be questioning or you aren't so sure about. And then I also invite you to consider, how are you seeing the saboteur really showing up in your life, personally, professionally? What kind of impact do you see this having in your world today? So that is where we're headed. And before we have those few moments of silence, just want to check in to see what, if any, questions do you have about taking this assessment? All right, I could feel like you're already in it, jumping in there. I love it. So please, we'll take about 5 minutes to complete the assessment. I'll stop sharing for a moment. And then we'll circle back. About 3 more minutes. Take about 1 more minute, please. Okay, so wherever you're at is just fine. And now that you've had a chance to experience the saboteur assessment and you're looking at those saboteurs that might be gripping you, I wanted to chat a little bit more about those saboteurs. And a very important aspect of these saboteurs is that these are strengths that we have that are overdone or misapplied. So there's a sage side to each of these saboteurs. And when we overdo or misapply our strength, it becomes a saboteur. So I'll give you a personal example. One of my top saboteurs is the hyper achiever. When I'm on the sage side of this, I am able to get many things done with ease and things flow. And I am so happy about how productive I am. And I'm able to work on all different types of projects at the same time. It's terrific. The minute, though, that I start noticing those old tapes or patterns in my head, is that when I'm judging myself, when I'm telling myself I'm a failure unless I'm constantly achieving, you're only as good as your last success. You have to keep achieving and doing all the time to prove your worthiness as a human being. Now I'm in saboteur land. So really important to start noticing that pattern. It's not that I want to get rid of my saboteur. I don't want to get rid of my strength of being able to accomplish so many things, but I want to minimize the saboteur piece of it so that I can experience the joy and the wonderful feeling when I'm really leveraging my strength. And again, so we want to think about how can we leverage these strengths that we have and really stay in our stage. Another movie reference for you, if you are a Matrix fan, when I first started learning about this theory, I imagined myself plugged into the machine of the Matrix. And for those of you that know this movie, it's like we think we're having our own empowered life, and we're going through our day to day. But the minute we're ripped out from the machine, we start to realize, oh my God, I have been like overrun by these recurring negative thought patterns that I'm not even aware that I'm having, and that I actually could shift this. I don't need to stay stuck in that negativity. I can move into my stage. So very, very powerful. And as I was alluding to a little bit earlier, when we're hijacked with that judge showing up with one or more of those saboteurs, we don't need to get too worried about which saboteur is it. And I know that might be hard for our sticklers, which is another top one of mine, by the way. You might want to really, like, I need to know, identify exactly which saboteur it is. Honestly, as long as you're recognizing, oh my gosh, I'm experiencing a lot of negativity right now. Okay, that means my judge and one or more of these saboteurs are in the house, and that's an opportunity for me to shift. How do I do that? And the way that we shift, and I'm going to introduce you to this in just a little bit, is by going into sensory mindful activity that we call positive quotient reps, or PQ reps. Mental fitness, it's like a gym. This is our dumbbell for our framework here is called the PQ rep. And I'm going to give you an experience of PQ reps in just a moment. But before we do, now that you've had a chance to go through this assessment, I'd really like to know who's in the house here, not just about your HR background, but which of these saboteurs is your top saboteur currently? Which brings us to our poll. So Elda, when you are ready.
All right. So the third poll launched here.
Fantastic. So you'll see all those saboteurs listed there. And which was your top? Love to know who we have with us today. I'm eager with anticipation, Elva.
I know I went ahead and took it too, just to see what would happen.
Awesome. I love it. It's a great tool for sure.
We'll give everyone just a little bit more. So we only have 19 participants so far. So if everyone can get there.
Oh, so some of you haven't received your results yet. Thank you for letting us know. I appreciate that. You hopefully, it usually doesn't take too long to get the email with that. And we can just go with the folks that have received their results thus far. Thank you for letting us know. All right, so I have some fellow sticklers in the house. 37%, 37% pleaser, which speaking of HR is not surprising. And then a few restless, hypervigilant, and avoider. All right. Thank you for authentically sharing your saboteurs with us. I very much appreciate that vulnerability. And now that you have this awareness and you're sitting here wondering about, okay, like, well, how are these saboteurs impacting me? That brings us back to the real life situation that you identified a few minutes ago. And what I'm going to invite you to do is take a couple of introverted moments on your own and consider which of the saboteurs are you noticing showing up in that real life situation? And it doesn't necessarily have to be the one that's the top one on your report. You might think there are others that are at play, which absolutely could be the case. And for those of you that are still waiting on the results, just go with what you think, which saboteurs are really playing into the situation. Thinking about your judge too. What is your judge telling you? Are you judging yourself, others, the situation? What feelings are coming up as you're really starting to bring those subconscious negative thoughts and feelings to the surface? Really noticing them. And also, what if any physical sensations might you be noticing as you're looking at this? And I invite you to really tune in physically, because our body is the only part of us that's truly present. Our brain is either looking ahead or behind. And oftentimes our body is giving us all kinds of cues and clues as to what's really going on for us, which we tend to ignore until we're in pain. So really starting to tune in, maybe you feel a tightness in your chest. Oftentimes when the saboteurs are at play, we go into shallow breathing or we stop breathing. And now not only are we being ruled by those saboteurs, but we're also not getting full circulation to our brain, which is definitely not helping us work at our best capacity. So please take a minute or so on your own and jot down, and you have a place to do this on page 16 of your material, or on a piece of paper, doesn't matter, which saboteurs or judge are at play for you. Just take a few more moments. All right, as we're starting to pause here, and of course, I invite you to continue reflecting on this after our session and as we continue to go through this session. I'm a big believer and very passionate about the idea that I love to inspire reflection and results. And so much of our day to day, we're not reflecting. We're so caught up in the crisis du jour and being in service to others for our pleasers, which is a wonderful thing. But when we're overdoing it, then we don't create that space to reflect and be able to make more conscious choice. So thank you so much for engaging today and really creating that space for yourself and giving yourself that gift of reflection. So with that, we are now going to move to our second core muscle, which is the sage. And again, this idea of the sage, which lives in that part of our brain where all that positivity, creativity, innovation, being able to have laser focus, knowing our passion, our purpose, all live within our sage. And this is really the inner Jedi of ourselves. And this brings about the core sage perspective. And the ultimate sage perspective is that when we look at any circumstance or situation, where's the gift? How can I turn this circumstance, situation into a gift of learning or an opportunity, even the ones that we're not so happy about initially? And I know when I first was learning about this framework, I was like, wait a minute, but no, I didn't want some of these things to happen to me. But then when I really started to reflect back on some challenging circumstances I realized these were the greatest learning growth opportunities of my life. And one example of that was when I published my book, Stepping into More Lessons from a Recovering Perfectionist, which, by the way, is a lifelong journey. The book is all about how I disconnected from my passion of self-expressing primarily through singing because of my perfectionism. So how I disconnected from that, how I reconnected to it. And when I published this book, my husband, trying to be a champion of my book, sent a few copies of my book to his family who all live in Israel. And I used to live in Israel with my husband years back. And when they received this book, they did not read the book. They went directly to the chapter about when I lived in Israel. And it was the perfect storm. And they were insulted, they were hurt, they were angry. It brought up a lot of things that were never discussed over 20 years before. And it was really a terrible, challenging time for me. So much so that we had a family trip planned to Israel, and they asked me not to join in that trip. So it was a very difficult time. And at that time, trust me, my saboteurs were at play. My judge was at play. I was feeling all kinds of shame, embarrassment, fear. But very quickly, without even knowing this framework, I found myself asking myself, what am I supposed to get from this? What am I supposed to do with this? And I realized that these relationships, this family is not going away. I have longed for years to feel connected to them. And I have 2 children, and I know they want to have a relationship with my children and my husband. What can I do to bridge? What can I do to build this connection with them? So I started inviting them to each brother, my in-laws, to Skype sessions, to having conversation. Sometimes they wouldn't show up. I just kept going. and going. And it's been about 10 years now, and I am happy to share that our relationship is the best it's ever been. We're actually going next week to have a post-wedding celebration for our daughter who got married last year, and now we're going to celebrate with the family in Israel. And you know what? None of this would have happened unless we were able to clear out all of the BS that had built up over the years. And that's the sage perspective of my book. That was the lesson. I didn't realize when I was stepping into more, I was going to step into a lot of crap until I was able to find that gift and that opportunity. Similarly, I have neighbors across the street 2 days after their son's 21st birthday, run over by a truck, killed. They donated all of his organs. They have created a place called Nate's Place for teens in recovery because he had been in recovery years before, and physical activity and hobbies is what saved him. So they have taken this horrific situation and created a way to give back in Nate's name, and so that Nate has a legacy. So again, even in the most terrible situation, there is this sage perspective that is open to us and a possibility for us. And you know, this really brings the perspective, or the question, I should say, when we ask ourselves which perspective is true, that what the saboteur is telling us, like what's happening in the moment is bad, or what the sage is telling us, this is a gift. And honestly, the answer is whichever you believe. If you tell yourself this is the worst thing in the world, then that is going to be your truth. If you're able to start even just asking yourself that question, where is the learning? That starts to shift us into that sage perspective and into that truth. And again, to be able to access the sage, we need to be able to build our self-command muscle, which is where we are headed now, this idea of self-command. And so what this leads to is what I was mentioning a few minutes ago, which is, okay, when we're triggered and we know the judge and the saboteurs are up, what do? How do we get to our sage? And this brings us to the idea of PQ reps, as I was mentioning before. So PQ reps are all about, it's a mindful activity, it's a sensory activity. Again, going into our body, whether it be touch, smell, sight, breath. There's a variety of ways to do PQ reps. And as I mentioned, breath is a foundational one. So even just starting by taking a nice slow inhale and feeling the air enter into our belly and just slowly releasing, that is a form of a PQ rep. You can do, many times people like to do PQ reps with their eyes closed. You can also do them with your eyes open. You can do them in front of other people and they're not even going to know you're doing them, which is one of the beauties of PQ reps. And I'm going to give you an experience of PQ reps now. And there, like I said, there's different ways to do this. So just to kind of give you a sort of a smorgasbord approach, I'm going to introduce you to a variety of different ways to do it. Normally when I'm doing them, I'm just choosing one way, maybe two, but usually one method at a time. So with that, if you're comfortable, I'm going to invite you to close your eyes, and I'm going to do the same. And as I'm going to guide you through some different PQ reps. If you're a little confused, you can also look at the screen and I'll be demonstrating some of the things I'll be mentioning. And just to get us grounded and settled, let's go ahead and take a nice slow inhale through the nose, feeling the air enter our belly, our chest. And in this first round of breath, I'll invite you to exhale through the mouth. You can even just sigh it out. Wiggle around if you'd like. Just finding yourself becoming more present. If your feet aren't solidly planted on the earth, I invite you to do so. And take another nice slow inhale through your nose. feeling your ribs expand. And this time, let's take a nice slow exhale through the nose, emptying out completely and fully. Feeling at ease, feeling present. And as you continue to breathe at your own natural rhythm, I invite you now to take 2 fingertips and to rub them together with such attention that you feel each and every ridge of the 2 fingertips. As you're continuing to rub those 2 fingertips together, keep breathing. And as thoughts come up, and they will, compassionately bring yourself back to the sensation of those 2 fingertips rubbing together. Good. Now, I invite you to take the palm of one hand and hold it up, and then to take the opposite hand and to slowly move that opposite hand down the fingertip and palm of the opposite hand, and notice all of the sensations that come up as you're moving one hand down the other. Again, keep breathing. You can do that a couple of times, and as thoughts come up, just bring yourself back. You're doing just fine. Great. And now I'm going to invite you to take one finger and place it underneath your nose. And as you inhale, notice the temperature of the air entering your nostrils. And notice the temperature of the air exiting your nostrils. Perhaps the temperature has changed and become a little warmer. Do that a couple more times. Great. You can put your finger down, and now I'm going to invite you to notice the farthest away sound that you can hear. Take in the farthest away sound you can hear. And now notice the closest sound you can hear. And if you haven't already noticed the sound of your breath, I invite you to do so now. Great, so go ahead, please take a couple more rounds of breath at your own natural rhythm. And when you're ready, you can open your eyes, please. All right, so welcome back. And in the chat, I would love to hear from you how you're feeling after just a couple of minutes of some PQ reps. Let us know what that experience was like for you. Thank you, Emily. Calm, grounding, relaxed, more relaxed, less tension in the shoulders. Yes, mindful breathing brings you back to your center. Nice, Lauren. Yes, so this was just about 4 minutes, focused. Thank you, ready to work. I love it. Wow, just 4 minutes, and look at the shift you're experiencing in the short amount of time. So actually the research that was done around these PQ reps was they used an MRI machine, and as little as 10 seconds equals 1 dumbbell rep for the PQ rep, as little as 10 seconds on an MRI showed the weakening of the saboteur muscle and a strengthening of our sage muscle, which is pretty remarkable. And if you find yourself getting hijacked real time with somebody, Either you could do PQ reps in the moment. You might start rubbing your fingers. You might look at that person and look for their inner stage. You might start to notice things about that person you hadn't really noticed before and truly how they look. So there's lots of different ways to do these PQ reps. And what I love about these PQ reps, I am myself an avid meditator and I'm a big fan of meditation. The challenge though with meditation is we need these pristine conditions, right? Whatever your thing is, whether it's, dark lights, the candle, the music, whatever it is, that's all well and good. But in the moment when you're triggered, how do you work through that hijack? And this is where these PQ reps really save the day. And again, being a coach for many years, this was a primary reason that I resonated so much with this approach, because again, I'm human too. In the moment, how do I get myself to a more neutral space so I can make a conscious choice and hopefully tap into my sage? And even if I've gone down the rabbit hole, I am now able to get to that more neutral place much quicker with these PQ reps. So these are really foundational to this framework. So the question becomes, is it really possible to shift from our saboteurs to the sage? And it really depends on how charged we are. How many of these PQ reps have we been doing? And I'm going to talk more about that in just a little bit. So the first of all, I want to share with you this idea of the operating system. So now that we talked about these core muscles, we've talked about the saboteur interceptor, we've talked about sage, and now self-command. When you're in the saboteur mode, you're noticing the judge and one or more of these saboteurs, that is your opportunity in your head, literally to yell, stop, stop. Whatever I'm telling myself right now is a lie, because each saboteur and the judge has a lie. So instead of thinking my way through it, which is what we tend to do, and that keeps us on that hamster loop of negativity, I'm going to just say, stop. I'm going to do some PQ reps, whether it's the finger rubbing, whether it's me breathing, and there's many other ways to do PQ reps. That is the pattern interrupt that gets me to that more neutral place. And now I can start asking myself some great questions, starting with, what's the sage perspective? Where is that learning? Where is the opportunity for growth? And then I might ask myself specifically about the 5 sage powers, such as how can I be empathetic or compassionate in this situation? Maybe I need to be more curious. Maybe there's ways to be creative. Maybe I need to be clear about my purpose here. How can I take clear, laser focused action? Those are all the sage powers that I might be able to apply one or more of those to what's happening in the moment. So this is really foundational to working through our triggers real time. And then again, the question is, are we able really to do that real time? And the answer is yes, but it depends on how much mental muscle strength have you built? How many of these PQ reps have you been doing proactively? Not just when you're triggered, proactively doing these reps. So thinking like a gas tank, you don't wait till you're on fumes, hopefully, to fill up your tank. You're continually having gas in the tank so that when you need it, it's there. And it's the same thing here with these PQ reps. Because if we're looking for long-lasting change, only 20% comes theory or insight, 80% comes from mental muscle. Think about any workshop you've attended. You might have been fascinated and really wanting to use what you've learned in the workshop. And for most of us, if we're lucky, maybe we'll take one thing from a workshop. And this is why. Because theory is theory, but we need to use this. We need to build those neural synapses to create new habit. It's not going to just happen magically on its own. And so when we're first learning about this framework and the PQ reps, it's recommended that we do at least 15 minutes per day of these reps for 6 to 8 weeks. So we're building that mental muscle. And there's really different ways of doing this. I do 5 minutes in the morning. I usually do around lunchtime. Transitions are a great time. So I might set my timer for 2 to 5 minutes around lunchtime before I end my work day. Whenever it makes sense for you, even as you're taking a walk, you could be doing PQ reps, really noticing the wind on your face and that experience of the wind touching you, or truly seeing what's around you. All of those things count as PQ reps. So there's lots of different ways to do this, but the more that we're doing it on a regular basis, that's how we're able to shift easier when we're actually getting hijacked. So all of what I'm sharing with you today is part of a 7-week program, Positive Intelligence program. And actually, I'm going to be running one of these programs at the end of July, but I run these regularly either as a public program, or this also can be brought into organizations. And this is really the foundational setting of this model. And it's a 7-week program where you have an app and you watch an hour video each week from Shirzad Chamine, the creator of this program. On the app, it's gamified to be able to do these PQ reps. There's actually many guided PQ reps, so you don't even have to worry about doing them on your own. It gamifies it as well, and I'll show you a snapshot of that in just a moment. There's also the book of positive intelligence. There's a weekly pod meeting where I'm facilitating a discussion on the theme of the week around this framework, and you have access to that app for a year. And just to give you a sense of what that app looks like, you'll see here, it's great. It has a daily focus each day. So which part of this framework am I honing in on? There are challenges throughout the day so that you can proactively do your PQ rep. And then when you do, it shows your charge. And if you wait a long time, you're going to be back down to 0. So it's really clever in the way that it's set up. And again, there's many guided reps here, so that I don't use that aspect anymore, because I know the ones that are sort of my go-to. But this is a great way, like, to get you going and to get you comfortable with this, with the PQ reps. So I wanted to share that this is part of a bigger program. And actually, I'm going to share in just a little bit too an opportunity for anyone that's interested in participating in a 7-week program, whether it's the one upcoming or for a future one. And I also have an offer I'll tell you about if you decide that's something that interests you in just a little bit. But for now, let's go back to your real life situation. And I apologize for this slide, this terrible slide, but just in case that you don't have your participant materials on page 17 and 18, go ahead, please, and take a moment now that you know more about your SAGE and consider with this real life situation, all right, where might be that SAGE perspective, the learning, the gift, and possibly any of those SAGE superpowers I was mentioning around empathy, exploring, innovation, navigating by knowing what matters to you most, or being able to activate clear, laser-focused action. And then on the right, I'm a big fan in baby steps, and that the universe rewards action, even if it's a small little action. What might be a step, a baby step you can take with your real life situation in the next 2 weeks? And I've given you some food for thought there on the right-hand side of the screen. So go ahead, please just take a minute or so and jot down how your SAGE might be able to support you with your situation. take a few more moments. And of course, I want to invite you to come back to this when you have even more time for reflection. And as you're considering what action you might be taking around your situation, I also invite you to utilize the chat once again and to inspire us and declare any actions you're committing to the universe as well as to all of us. What insight, what action, what learning are you taking away and wanting to commit to on this real life situation? And you can share that, and that will inspire us to also have other thoughts and ideas so we can learn from each other. And please put that in the chat. Okay, so while I'm waiting for you to share some of those insights and nuggets, obviously we've covered a lot in our short period of time, and this is really just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much depth to the framework, and again, it's a very simple and impactful model. Oh, and there we have a comment from Lauren. I need to practice meeting people where they are. Not everything's about me. Fantastic. What a great insight, Lauren. Thank you. And just to sort of summarize where we've been, of course, now the comments are coming in. I love it. So Jill wrote to me, oh, hopefully it's okay, Jill, to say empathy. I think that's something we all could be working on ourselves, how to have empathy for ourselves and others. So just to summarize where we've been thus far, we've talked about this mental fitness model. You've had a chance to consider your judge and top saboteurs and go through the assessment. We've taken a look at the SAGE, and that is who we are at our core. And then self-command, how do we do those PQ reps to bring us to that neutral space to access our SAGE? And I'd love to actually, let me look at some more of your comments. Practice more leniency. Thank you, Kathy. And as you're considering all that we covered today, also in the chat, I invite you to write, what are you taking away from today? Like, what are the key takeaways before we do our raffle? And I'll share more about that in just a moment. So any key takeaways from today? And then we'll get into our raffle in just a moment. Practicing more leniency. Thank you, Kathy. And as we're waiting for folks to share, I also wanted to tell you about some of the goodies that I was mentioning earlier in the session. And that is, first of all, I'd love to stay connected. If this resonated with you in any way, I would love to be able to have conversation with you and also to offer you additional learning, because clearly you're lifelong learners or you wouldn't be here. So you have a QR code and a link there. If you're interested, go ahead and utilize either of those to get the article on 98% of HR professionals burning out. There's also another article called Mental Fitness Explained by a Cognitive Behavioral Therapist. There's also an overview of the 7-week program, mental fitness program I was mentioning to you. And I have a very special offer. And that is, if you are personally interested in bringing this into your organization and having that 7-week program, and by the way, there's a whole other business side to this framework we could talk about at another time, I will gift you personally a spot in that pod learning for free. So that is a $1,000 value. If you're interested in bringing this into your organization, you personally can attend for free. So I invite you, please, to stay connected, and I'm happy to share more and to have deeper conversation around any of that. So let's do our raffle. I'm going to stop sharing. and let Elda share her screen. And to let you know what the raffle is, I have two raffles I'm going to do today. One is a 45-minute coaching session to discuss your saboteur report or anything else that you would like regarding our session today. And the second is there is a separate assessment called the Positive Intelligence Assessment that looks at where you're at right now in that negative versus positive vortex of negativity versus positivity. I'll also send you 2 guided PQ rep sessions so that you can get this practice going on your own. So that is what we're raffling off. All right, so, and whoever wins, please be sure to put your email in the chat so we can capture that. And when you are ready, let's raffle off the 45-minute coaching session. Let's click to spin.
You see the wheel?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Great.
So if you just want to click in the center, there you go. Let's see who our lucky winner is. Lauren W. Lauren, are you still here? If so, let's go. Oh, good. Yes, you're here. Awesome. So please put your name in the chat box. And let's spin the wheel one more time for the other PQ assessment and guided PQ reps. And our lucky winner is Samantha H. Samantha, are you still here? Let us know. Otherwise, we will spin the wheel again. Okay, yes, Samantha, way to go. So please put your email in the chat as well. Awesome. So let me go back to sharing my screen real quick. And just want to really thank you for your engagement, for your attention, and for your investment in yourself. And as I mentioned, I welcome the chance to stay connected. I hope that this has been supportive for you personally and that your wheels are turning about, oh, how could I be supporting others in my world, in my life, in my organization? So welcome the chance to talk to you about any of that. And yes, thank you so much. I see people saying gratitude in the chat box. So it's been an absolute pleasure being with you, wishing you continued happiness, fulfillment, and great joy in all that you do and all that you're being, more importantly. Elda, back to you.
Yeah, no, thank you, Rachel. This has been great. And thank you to all of our participants. I really appreciate you being here today. And again, thank you, Rachel. This has been great and appreciate you sharing with Mile High SHRM today.
Absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.